Welcome everyone to our weekly live session as usual. It is April 24th, Saturday, and we just got through a more eventful week from what turned into more kind of flattish, choppy action, low volatility that we've been experiencing through late last week into early this week. The volatility was mainly caused by announcements from Biden that he would be implementing a tax increase. This is to fund his new bills related to family funding. So he will be planning on at least funding this through a tax increase. So it is pretty bearish news. I touched on it a bit throughout the week in some of my thoughts that I shared. So I think overall, with regards to the proposed tax increase, it's a bit of a negotiating strategy by Biden because the doubling of the long-term capital gains tax and also relating to income tax is pretty significant, right? I looked back at some research and we haven't had that since I think the 80s or 70s. So it hasn't really been that high, so it is pretty significant. But yeah, I think it's more of a negotiating factor on the Democrats' end, so to kind of negotiate a better number. It is pretty bad that it's being funded through a tax increase. Obviously, on the American perspective and the perspective of the economy, you'd obviously like to fund these bills another way, but yeah, that is what he's chosen. I do think that it will likely not get passed, right? Because once it goes through, the House, they will need a sufficient amount of votes to be able to get that passed. But that's my opinions on that. He will need to get this funded somehow, some way or another. So that will need to be done. But I think it will end up, likely a lower tax increase being implemented at the final stage, which the market didn't really price in too much. But I guess it's possible that the alternative scenario where shorts are kind of being sucked in enough that we can get that kind of parabolic melt up. So on my end, I'm going to be kind of waiting to see if we get a green or red Monday and kind of going from there. We do have a hedge position that we're holding right now, so likely we'll get rid of those if we can see a green Monday and likely follow through from there. Other than that, SPACs recovered pretty significantly, most notably Skills, GHVI, some big ones, and a few others. So that was great. Most notably as well, next week we are currently in earnings season. So next week it is jam-packed with a lot of earnings, a lot of big tech, large cap in various sectors, healthcare, financials, tech, and everything in between. So pretty big. The most kind of biggest ones are Tesla, Monday after hours, big watch there. 3M, UPS, CROX, all on Tuesday pre-market, Tuesday after hours, AMD, Microsoft, Pinterest, Alphabet, parent company of Google, Visa, Starbucks, Teradyne. So, really jam packed there. Enphase as well, a big energy company, pretty beat down already. Shopify, Spotify, all and Young Brands as well, all on Wednesday, in addition to Boeing in the airline sector. And Apple, Facebook, Qualcomm, eBay, Teladoc, Logitech, MGM, all Wednesday after hours. Caterpillar, Neo, Amazon, McDonald's, Gilead in the healthcare sector, Twitter, Domino's, Altria, and ExxonMobil, Chevron as well in the energy sector as well. So a really jam-packed earnings week. We will see likely significant volatility in these names as they're reporting, especially with kind of sympathy plays and whatnot. If we get kind of big beats or big misses as well. So I think more or less it's more likely to see a more ramp up, melt up throughout this week with a lot of the big names, big large caps are reporting. It's likely that we kind of get a bump in the overall market from that. So pretty good. Also, in addition to that, housing numbers were released on Friday, so that had a bit of a bump as well to kind of recover from the a bit of a sell-off that we had intraday on the Biden tax news. So there's that as well. So housing numbers look good. So yeah, it's a really exciting week going into this week. This week, not too much to go over, so we'll cover it a little bit more in depth later on in the live session. But I'll pass it on to DJ, who will go over his usual SPY analysis, and we'll go from there.
All right, yeah. So pretty eventful week, as Ramg mentioned. We had some pretty significant fundamental news to the markets with Biden's proposal on tax increases for capital gains and income tax. So because of that, we had quite a bearish day on Thursday, where previously we retook the daily EMA and we gave it right back on Thursday, falling below it. And before this kind of candle on Friday, it really was a lower high on the daily, and with that news, it looked like a further pullback was coming, on SPY to the lower 400s off that news. But immediately on Friday, we pretty much just absorbed the entirety of that and hit all-time highs. But we dumped back a little bit near the close, but it is still a very strong recovery, very strong close. And we did hit a new all-time high on Friday. There's a little bit more volatility this week. As you can see, the volume has increased a little bit compared to the following weeks, and we've been getting a little bit more action both down and up, larger intraday lows and highs. The most notable thing is SPY is back into an all-time high, even after the news drop, which kind of leads to a couple scenarios where the first is that the market didn't properly absorb this incoming news. So maybe there was a bit of an underreaction initially, and we'll see a pullback coming. Another possibility is that a lot of these shorts got sucked in here or on Thursday, and the fact that we're back all-time highs, there is sort of no real catalyst for us to push back down. So if we do continue up on Monday with a solid green day on Monday, I do think that this will propel a very strong move in SPY and the rest of the market. So if we do see a fresh all-time high on Monday and push, I think due to this week's consolidation and a bit of the trap on Thursday, if we push all-time highs Monday, I think we will see a bullish move up to 20s level and shortly into the 430 levels. So what we really have here is kind of a week of consolidation here. So we had this really extended move up, bit of a pull, bit of a move up, and now we're going to see if we kind of just continue to shoot up next week or we get a pullback. Judging on Friday, it was just really strong buying throughout the entirety of the day, and it absorbed the news quite strong. So I do think a little bit more bullish bias heading into next week, but at the same time, technically, even though SPY is at all-time highs, and we recovered nicely. I don't think the coming week will have much to do with technicals. It will kind of have to do with the earnings reports, because it is in like a massive week for earnings. Pretty much all of big tech FANG companies are reporting, along with some other significant names as well. As we've seen in the Netflix earnings report, where it tanked, 10%, and then that's what gave QQQ a gap down the following day on Wednesday, and it pulled back the markets a little bit from that. So next week, big tech earnings and other stocks, I think, will dictate sort of what happens to SPY. If we get some nice beats and some nice numbers, then I think the shorts are really screwed, and we're going to 420, 425 on SPYs, QQQ into the 345 range, 350s. If we see more or less mixed results, then I do think I would be slightly bullish biased, like I mentioned earlier. But if we see poor numbers and poor growth, and drops in these major earnings, then I do think, regardless of how strong it is technically, we will kind of gap down and consolidate and pull back. So next week it should be quite a volatile week, just because of earnings on the major names. Intraday volatility might not be too high. It really is about the numbers and the gap up and the gap downs. I think it really has the entire market really is kind of waiting for these numbers from the major tech names, and it's really the current market direction is quite sensitive. So it really would need, I think, at least some beats, or at least some beats, to be able to continue this move up. If the majority are moving down or missing estimates, then I don't think we will continue up, no matter how bullish we seem technically. So SPY weekly chart, we'll take a look at it. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth green week. Very small green week, I would say. It's about 4 green weeks. This one, we had a bit of a pull, and then we closed near the top. Yeah, weekly RSI 71, so slightly overbought here, and all-time highs, of course. So we'll see again if next week, we break out. We will be back over the weekly upper Bollinger on SPY and continue upwards. But once again, next week, it's just not really about too much on the charts, but more to do with the fundamentals, as it's earnings season. QQQ, weaker than SPY, because SPY, if we notice on the daily chart, hit an all-time high on Friday, and it's closing slightly below the all-time high, whereas QQQ, we can see, didn't actually break all-time high compared to April 16th, which is when it actually hit all-time highs. It did recover as well, but we're not there at the same levels. That's majorly just because of the Biden tax proposal. It hits the growth stocks the hardest, and it hits the high tech and speculative plays more. So QQQ got a bit more of a sell-off, as opposed to the majority of the SPY stocks. So we can see a bit of a lag in the indexes, but not by too much. Overall, the charts and patterns look pretty much the same. Both of these names, both of these indexes overtook, both the daily EMAs back at the moment. But, one day it's been dropping it, one day it's been overtaking it, another day it's been dropping it, and now we're overtaking it again. It's very close, and it's really going to be once again what happens next week. We'll see. Especially QQQ. I think if QQQ manages to make a new all-time high, SPY will really shoot up because it's really tech that is slightly lagging SPY downwards at the moment. So we should be able to see strong move up there. And now I'm just going to cover a couple plays. First is skills, as we saw a massive short squeeze, which we called out last week. And then the second is Zoom, which I think it's a pretty good play, heading into next couple weeks and months into earnings. So skills, I mentioned we've seen consistently algo down on the daily chart on skills. The daily EMA has been pushing down the price action for over 30, 40, 50 days. And I mentioned as soon as we find a temporary bottom on skills, if we were to go over the daily EMA, we would squeeze about 50% from the lows. So that's pretty much exactly what happened here. Last week in the video, I predicted it would come sometime in the next 1 to 2 weeks, with the likelihood of being sometime mid this week. We got exactly that. We broke to the lower Bollinger Band on the daily, which panicked a lot of people out, and we saw a massive recovery, and we squeezed over the daily EMA, which is the first time we crossed over here since March 15th, which has been over a month since it was last trading above the daily EMA. That causes a technical switch into algos to swap bullish, and shorts to cover, and people to kind of hop in. So that kind of push up, as we've seen in the past, every time it's bottomed and then hit the daily EMA, it's squeezed another couple, 2-3 days to the upside. And each time is about 30% bounces off the bottom. I predicted around 50% from this bottom because we were severely oversold. Even daily RSI was in the 20s. So we did scale in a lot of warrants, entered in long shares as well, $15 range. And the bottom around 1260, and we got to move up to 1950 in 2 days. So that is actually about pretty much exactly 50% move off the bottom. And now what we're seeing is whether skills can hold the daily EMA here. It retested it and held for now. If it can hold this daily EMA, what will happen is the EMAs and Bollinger Bands will start sloping upwards, and skills will look for a trend change. If we get this trend change on skills, short-term move to about $24, I would say. So we've had this consistent pattern of lower highs and lower lows. We had this move up. If we can't hold the daily EMA, we'll be looking for a higher low above the 1260 range. And I would say it should be close to the $14 to $16 range, maybe around 15, if we can't hold the daily EMA. If we can, then we will see a smaller pull. And if we can break 1950, which is the high of the bounce, we should see a continued move upwards. And I think a reasonable short-term target would be somewhere around 24 to 26, where we can retrace to pretty much near here. And this is still overall a bearish trend on the daily, but it's a bit of a short-term uptrend, and this would be 100% move from the bottom. So I think it's a pretty reasonable target short-term, but also a decent enough short-term target to be probably taking profits and exiting the majority of the positions if we get there. There is a catalyst, which is May 4th, the earnings. So That's May 4th, so we could see a bit of a squeeze into earnings on skills. Key is, can we hold daily EMA levels? If we do, the move up will be quicker. If we don't, I would rebuy on I would add more on the higher low and keep adding to the long, because we do have a trend change here with this move over the daily EMA. It's just that it's a bit too risky to re-add what we exited on this 50% move just now. If it does go over, 1950, we'll see short-term upside. If it drops, we'll see, maybe a 10-15% pullback. But if you're in this for the long term, then any price here is a buy, which is why I added some shares on Friday back to my long-term holdings on skills. But short term, it's safer to see whether or not daily MA holds here. But play turned out pretty much exactly as it did. I mentioned we took the skills warrants position for more leverage with the 1150 strike price. So we started buying in the $5 range, $4 range, $3 range, at an average about 450, 480 average, and we had a huge pop in 2 days where it hit as high as 8. So that was a good 50, 60% gains in just 2 days here. So similarly, if skills drops the daily EMA, the warrants can pull back to about $4.60 to $5 again, which I would add back pretty heavily. But if it doesn't, I'll kind of just ride my remaining position. And if skills can hit about 24, these warrants will be around $12. So can ride the rest out there. Moving on to Zoom. So Zoom, it's a pretty interesting story, obviously, with the COVID impact and Zoom becoming one of the hottest COVID stocks, pretty much the premier COVID stock everybody thought of. We really shot up very high from under 100 to almost $600 at the all-time high. And ever since, it's been pulling back, it's been consolidating, and we're actually in a pretty tight range on Zoom. How you can kind of notice that is just look at kind of, where the upper Bollinger Band is and the lower Bollinger Band is, and the EMAs. It's 340, 310, EMAs 325s. That's quite a small range right now, I would say. You can even see it on the chart, right? You can see it kind of on the chart itself, how small the range is. Just kind of look, where the upper Bollinger was a while ago over here compared to the lower range, right? This is a really large gap in between a price action. And now you see the same gap here is very small. This means that it's pretty much trading in a very flat range. Also, it means that the options are going to be really cheap here, as in probably the cheapest monthly options you can start buying would be around now. It's because options are priced on a lot of factors, with one of the main factors being volatility, implied volatility. So because it's been trading at a very flat range for a while, the implied volatility is quite low, making premiums pretty cheap. So it's a pretty good play for monthly calls. Also, in particular, I think it's sold off about 50% from the highs, basing quite well now. So that's a plus. And also the range is starting to turn more bullish favored. You can see that the downward slope of the bands are starting to, flatten out. The lower Bollinger Band is starting to rise. The daily EMAs are starting to flatten and rise as well. And we found a low, and there is quite a bit of support and resistance levels but once we get through them, there's a very big move up. So support, you're right. We got 300 level supports. We got 315 level supports. We can take daily EMAs as support levels here. Resistances, we got upper Bollinger Band. We got a resistance here in the 345 range. And then there's like out here, this 355 triple top. But if Zoom, makes a move and breaks above this 355 range, there's basically a lack of resistance until 440. So there is basically, a lot of reward here to be had. There's no more resistance and wicks after you break out the 350 range. So there's a very real chance of a move in the coming weeks or month that propels Zoom to, I would say, about the 380 to $420 range. So a 400 target in a couple of weeks is pretty realistic, I actually think, based on this daily chart. And the downside is relatively low because we have support levels here and it is starting to trend up. So it's at worst, it's about like a $20 downside from here with closer to a $60, $80 upside with premiums also being quite cheap. Risk to reward is pretty favorable. So I mentioned this in the group and I alerted it, and with the thesis, it's good risk reward. So it's something I'm focusing on as well. Weekly chart on Zoom, same thing. We can see it's really flattened out over the last 8 weeks, which is a 2-month span. We haven't broke that 355 range. We haven't dropped that 300 range, and we're trading pretty much flat here. Weekly EMA is at 340 resistance, 342. Similar resistance to the daily upper Bollinger Band. So if we break out 340s next week, and if we break out 340s, 343s next week, I wouldn't be surprised to see a very fast move to 350 on Zoom. And if it really gains strength, I could even see in about a week or even 1 to 2 weeks from now, we could see that early move to 380 on Zoom very quickly. So it's quite strong, but there's also a possibility that we will kind of continue this sideways flat consolidation. We did get 3 green days on Zoom up here, so maybe we get a bit of a pull and some more tightening range in which I'll look to add more. But if we break out here, I would be looking to hold. And then, if we break out on a very significant move, I would be looking to scale out from here. That's the play I'm probably going to be focused the most on in the next week at least, or coming weeks, depending on how action goes. Other than that, I'll be watching next week for all the earning plays, all the big tech earnings and market sentiment, and just going to follow that to see how we continue from the trend overall from here. So that's it for me this week. Gonna pass it over to Ramji for him to share his thoughts.
Yeah, so DJ covered it pretty well. There's 2 scenarios we could kind of go through. A little bit hard to say. There's kind of factors on both sides. So for both scenarios, whether we kind of continue upwards and go through that melt up, or the Biden tax implications, proposed tax implications, kind of get a little bit more priced in. So either or could occur. I think Monday would be a good early indication of that. Whether shorts or kind of sucked in, or and they continue to cover, or if we kind of get a little bit more of that priced in. So we'll see how it goes. Obviously, same thing with QQQ. QQQ would be likely a little bit more affected, despite not recovering as much from the kind of a little bit of volatility we got last week. So we'll be watching mainly on that, to see if we do essentially recover from, continue upwards or kind of get that tax implication priced in. So we'll be watching on that. Just to cover a few plays that we went through this week. Intel earnings, dropped, made that 5% move down. So gap down. So that was great. We played both that and AMD as well, short term. We do have more longer term AMD calls, which I think are fine as well. AMD does report earnings next week, this week. So we'll see how that goes. Intel was a great earnings play. I took that because the options weren't too kind of pricey, and it wasn't really pricing in too much of a large move, despite the fact that I kind of saw a large move down, like we did see at least 5%. On earnings, because Intel isn't that great of a company in the sector compared to its comparables like AMD. It did get some strength from a lot of the news with Intel. So I thought it was a little bit too pricey at these levels, and earnings would likely disappoint, especially with the higher earnings estimates on the street that Wall Street had for the company, and with prior earnings reports and chip shortages, etc. Didn't expect too great of earnings, so we did see that drop, which was great. ChargePoint, I made a sell. I sold puts on ChargePoint. I thought this was the best kind of strategy to go with, because of the fact that I like ChargePoint as a long play after being sold off from the Biden infrastructure news pump. So it held support really well over here at these levels. So I thought that selling puts would be the best option, because if we do, worst case, share price continues to drop and falls below support, we would we would just get exercised, and I don't mind, purchasing the shares at those levels. Let's say it drops to $16 level, $18 levels, etc. At that point, if it's around $18, our it's basically, we don't lose any money, right? Because I did sell in the money puts at strike price of $22. So I'm expecting fairly large recovery up. I don't expect it to go past the support levels. And worst case, if the share price continued to drop, we would just get filled. If we go to $16, it's a great price to get filled regardless. So I didn't mind that. Ideally, I'd like these puts to expire worthless. Therefore, because we're selling the puts, we are retaining the full premium. So that's all free money for us. So yeah, I covered a bit just because we had a large move up on Friday. So I thought I should just cover a 1/3 position there. But the other 2/3 of the position I will be holding long. I don't think we'll go below these levels. So that is a great play so far. We did bounce back from the support levels. It held well, and we're continuing upwards. So it looks like we got a great price on the premiums that we sold. So great play there. In the SPAC sector, GHVI SKLZ, both two of the largest names that were moving this week. GHVI, pretty significant move up from these bottoms. We did expect last week that we would get the beginning of what I believe is a recovery in the entire SPAC sector. I kind of specified, only the really good names would make that recovery and rebound. So these some of my favorite names like GHVI recovering nicely. Skills extremely oversold, so it is making that recovery. We most notably we saw that biggest move. We do have the warrants mainly, so we did see that large move of 75% on the day. Including the after hours move of 5%, which was a great large recovery. I do expect us to continue up from here, as I believe we kind of bottomed out on the SPAC sector there. There was the SEC executive news there. So with Biden implementing a new chair there, so I believe we've kind of hit a bit of the bottoms on SPACs. Some of them are extremely attractive at these levels. GHVI, it's really a steal, honestly, at even at levels that it dropped to before, around $11. So I mean, these are kind of no-brainers in my opinion. We still do have a long-term perspective on these because we could see some volatility, but I don't mind holding these. I like I said, it's extremely large position in my long account, and I'm holding very long on these. And really on a fundamental level, these companies are really great companies. Just getting a bit hit because of it's in the SPAC sector, right? So, institutions kind of easing out from it, and a lot of kind of mass media hits on SPACs, and not to mention some of these fraudulent SPACs and that are kind of coming out are kind of hurting the entire sector, right? So these kind of companies kind of get that sympathy hit on that, where the entire SPAC sector is getting kind of a bad name. So yeah, I mean, we kind of take advantage of that and get into those great names and kind of hold long. So IPOE as well, a great one that I like. And yeah, so these ones look good. Skills, we did see that large move up, so great there as well. Tesla is a big one. We have earnings on Monday after hours. This earnings, just to share my thoughts, I was thinking about this as well. Again, kind of with some of the news and everything. This earnings is a little difficult to predict, honestly. I think it's one of the much more harder ones to predict, in my opinion. I'm usually, predict the earnings really well, but this one's a little bit more difficult. We do have that kind of mass media um, FUD that's out, so all of those kind of fake news stories and really kind of short hits on the company in the media that you're seeing. This really reminds me similar to what I saw in 2018, 2019 during Model 3 times, where these kind of legacy companies were, in my opinion, feeling fairly threatened by Tesla as a company, and the media kind of bashing took full effect. I'm seeing a similar kind of trend here. Most notably, this started after delivery numbers came out. So I did indicate that, with those delivery numbers, that's when I entered long calls for what I expected was a move. We got a large move. We exited those, entered back, and have been holding since. And yeah, I mean, with the delivery numbers of over 180,000 that we saw last month on the quarter as well, it's a pretty big paradigm changer in the EV industry, especially for Tesla itself. I indicated that institutions would have to be buying in after that those delivery numbers, because of the fact that institutions have continually kind of got this wrong. It's well blowing out expectations and what institutions look for in the company. So with that, institutions kind of have to buy in, because it puts themselves at jeopardy not buying in with them putting out numbers like that. So in my opinion, overall, I think that earnings might actually be okay. It did make that kind of 10% move up that we've seen over the past month. So since our earnings was announced as well. So overall, I mean, it has made the usual move up that we make into earnings, but with this kind of mass media hit on Tesla, I think there's also an argument that I think earnings will be good regardless. I think earnings will be good. I think that the Wall Street has kind of raised their estimates a bit after seeing the delivery numbers, and it's always good to have a more conservative um, estimates and expectations rather than having high expectations. And even if we meet or exceed them, it's viewed as not a significant beat or not not really significant news. Whereas in the delivery numbers where we had lower to mid expectations and we produce really great numbers, it's looked as a really exceeding beat. So there is that, because usually we sell the news on even on good earnings. So with expectations being a little bit more bullish now, even great numbers might cause a bit of a sell-off. But also I think that with some of the sell-off that we've gotten, I think that institutions are still continue to be very skeptical about Tesla as a company. And some of these news media reports, I think institutions take it for face value. So um, with that, I think that it might be a bit of a concern for some of these large institutions, and money managers, etc. So I think Tesla hasn't really responded too much, right? Because it's not, there's not really any point of responding, right? Other than obviously, I think, like I said, they did make that tweet. Elon did make that tweet because I think it was affecting the Tesla share price. So you don't want to anger shareholders, but if it did not, they wouldn't respond. There's not really any point, because these are kind of just ridiculous reports, right? So there's no point of addressing them. But I think in the earnings call, many of the analysts, 100%, there's no doubt about it, will be continually asking questions in regards to the Texas accident, and all this news, the Chinese highway, whatnot, and all of this negative news that's been coming out. A lot of these analysts will be asking about that. Obviously, in addition to some of the statistics and numbers that Tesla reports. But I think the earnings call is a great kind of platform for Elon and some of the executives as well. They'll likely bring out the executives in the safety sector division of Tesla and whatnot to address all of the false narratives that's been put out. So I think the earnings call is a good platform to address that. And with that, you can kind of revamp the narrative, the negative fake news that's coming out, and that is a bullish sentiment for Tesla there, in addition to the good numbers. So I think it's not bad. Premiums aren't too bad too as well. So I do expect, whether we do kind of drop on kind of a sell the news on earnings. I do think we can get that 850, possibly even higher levels in the longer term. June, July kind of time range. So I mean, I'm bullish long term regardless. Short term, it's just a little bit of uncertainty, because there's kind of arguments on both sides. But more or less, I'm kind of leaning actually to maybe holding longer term calls, or just kind of holding a larger position in shares through earnings. But I'll look on Monday and see where we go. We could possibly just do kind of a lotto play. Kind of week out, or same week, being that it's Monday. Premiums, because premiums aren't that bad. They haven't really been getting too much of the IV bump there. So I'll share my thoughts on Monday in regards to that. But yeah, I mean, overall, there are kind of those arguments on both sides, like I mentioned. And then there's a little bit of speculation on my end that I mentioned it before, like, you know, you get kind of all this mass media, false narratives, fake news coming out, these hits on the companies. It looks like, like usually we have experience with this, but institutions are putting out these, short news on these companies looking to secure lower entries on the ticker. So I mean, there's a little bit of speculation there. I do think that's a possibility as well. That being said, it would be bullish for earnings because it would indicate that institutions are looking to enter before earnings at lower prices, meaning that they expect a larger move, prolonged move following earnings. So there's that as well. So I'll share my thoughts further and update you on Monday based on where we open and move on Tesla. I think we could kind of ramp up through the day heading into earnings. But I do think there's a little bit of that possibility, like I said, more related to the macro sector, that Biden's tax implications get a little bit more priced in on Monday, being that we had that large recovery on Friday. Could be a short-term bull trap where we get a little bit more priced in and kind of dip on Monday and get that red Monday as opposed to our usual gap up Monday and then go from there. But overall, like DJ and I mentioned, we're extremely bullish in the for the next month or two estimated range, and from there we would likely see a downtrend. But Tesla earnings, it will be pretty notable. So pretty exciting, and I think it could be a good play to hold their earnings on this one actually. So I'll update you guys on that, and we'll kind of go from there on Monday. Covering yields, it's been pretty stable from that, when we gapped up to 1.72, we've been kind of sliding down since. So this is continuing to look good, and it's a great for us. JMIA, I entered some long calls. It's getting a bit of that falling wedge, so these levels aren't too bad for JMIA. So we did kind of go, parabolic and in February and reached extremely high levels on JMIA. It's a good name I like, so I'm entered back long. We'll hold this as a little bit more of a long-term perspective. They do have their earnings as well, so I think this is a great play to kind of rebound and break out of that falling wedge here. So that's a good one. And lastly, something really exciting as well, Bitcoin. On last Saturday, I indicated, it's really just, speculation on my end, but it comes from kind of intuition and experience with some of these names, that I follow it really largely, and especially with these disruptors, which I have quite a bit of experience with, like Bitcoin and Tesla is another name of a disruptor. You have like I've been mentioning, with Tesla, you always have that negative news coming out. But same thing goes with Bitcoin. Institutions, governments, banks, financial institutions. It's all a threat to them. Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin is decentralized, so it continues to be a large threat for large institutions like that. Negative news continually comes out. Some more authoritative companies like countries like China, India, etc. It's more poses more of a large threat to them as well. So you saw that India banned Bitcoin. We saw the news today. Saudi Arabia banning crypto. I expect China to follow suit. These are governments that are more controlling, you could say, in these countries. So with that being said, it'd be more in their best interest to create somewhat of a stable coin that benefits their country and government more beneficially. You could see the same thing honestly in regards to a blanket statement towards the entire world. So the U.S., Canada, Australia, these companies, these countries. It's beneficial for them to create a digital currency and a stable coin for their own respective country as well, to move forward if we continue in this scope of crypto becoming the new real currency. So there is that. So I did think it was a little bit odd that we were continually going up, and all of this bullish news in regards to crypto with no negative sentiment at all, right? So I mentioned it Saturday, and the next day we got that negative news where I think the one of the independent governmental agencies were investigating the banks for some fraud and money laundering in regards to related to crypto, and some of these brokerages and wallet companies were implicated as well. So ever since then, we've got that massive sell-off. We did make a sell on the Coinbase IPO, and the day after, as what I believed is marking the temporary short-term top. And then we did sell out. I thought, like I said, on Saturday, with that kind of lack of bearish news, it was a little bit suspicious. So yeah, I thought that was a great time to even sell even more, and we're still holding a small base position. And yeah, it's just continuing to go into a downtrend. We haven't really seen a downtrend on Bitcoin in a long time, so this is great to see, because for individuals with the longer term perspective on Bitcoin, like ourselves, and continually to be bullish on Bitcoin. I'm extremely bullish on Bitcoin in the long run, regardless of where price goes. This is great because we get to we literally sold at the top, and we get to buy back cheaper. So this is a great thing to see. We are currently hovering around 50K. We've dropped to those $48,000 levels twice so far, and kind of bounced back a little bit. I do think we can pull a little bit lower, and I mentioned we would reach those high 40,000 levels, which we did, but I think we can reach a little bit lower into the mid 40,000 levels, which would be a great buy. But I'm going to start kind of easing in at those, 48 to 45,000 levels, and kind of add back kind of a more full position, and then I ride it upwards. Ultimately, like I said, I think we can really continue higher, and go parabolic on Bitcoin. Ultimate price target $100,000 plus. So nothing changes here. There's a lot of fear as well, so I hope that continues downwards. The cheaper the better. I would like to add back. We did sell at the top, so we really played this great throughout the past 7 months. Since we initially bought, we've literally added the exact lows, sold the exact tops. So we've just been killing it on Bitcoin. I'll be continuing to monitor Bitcoin, and will alert on my buybacks. Even at these levels, 50,000, it's pretty good. I mean, you got to remember that we were at 64,000 previously, about a week ago. So these are great levels, but I do expect a little bit lower. I'll alert as I ease in, and we'll go from there. But even at these levels, if you want to get a starter position back in, it's not a bad ad. So in my opinion, so yeah, that's my thoughts on that. And then finally, to headed into earnings. It's really a jam-packed earnings season this week, so it will be great to see, and I'll be really watching some of these names. I think there will be a lot of names that we can play an earnings play possibly. So I'll be looking out and monitoring the price action on these names, and where we go. There's a couple of kind of sympathy plays that we can engage in as well. based on the various sectors, like DJ and I did on Intel and AMD. Usually, you would go for an AMD type play because AMD wouldn't have a premium really, because their earnings isn't on the same day, right? But in this case, I actually went with Intel puts, because there wasn't a premium I saw on Intel. It wasn't pricing in that large move, so it was a great opportunity. But yeah, in the same sense where you kind of get that sympathy play, I think there will be some possibilities heading into this week. So I'll be watching that, and will alert it accordingly. I think our DJ alerted a riot put, so I think that will do well as we kind of continue lower. Especially, you have to understand it with riot. It's not really a strong company as a whole, so you have to kind of pay attention to market cap and realize that riot is being held up just solely by the Bitcoin price itself, right? So when you actually get into valuations, you'll realize that riot does have a lot of downwards potential here. So I think those will do well as well. A riot put kind of long term. So that's a great play as well. And then I also entered what I kind of said was a lotto. So I have just a very small position. CROX calls, because they do have their earnings on Tuesday, and I think they could beat their earnings there, and we could get some nice upwards trends on CROX. So I took some calls there. They're pretty, they're not too pricey, and CROC's been on an uptrend. So yeah, I thought it's a decent ad. So I have that as well. But yeah, that's all for my end on this week. So DJ, if you want to move to questions, doesn't look like there's too many this week. But um, SK asks, thoughts on Saudi banning crypto. How does it affect Bitcoin and Riot? Yeah, I touched on that. So I think yeah, I mean it's bearish news, just like the India looking to ban Bitcoin. Same thing. And Saudi Arabia and countries like Saudi, India, China, they're massive economies, really massive economies. The money and amount of capital in Saudi Arabia is insane. Same with India. India has a population of 1 billion people, right? China is their economy is just exploding, right? So just capital in all these countries, pretty crazy. Ultimately, it's difficult to ban a cryptocurrency. So there is some difficulties there, where the government can ban it, but you'll see how it goes. Countries like China, for example, um, more of a technological hold on their country's technology. So like China, the government owns the media, and a lot of the social media and tech is all really restricted, so they have a lot of control there. So a country like China, I think, can do a better job in actually implementing a ban on crypto, whereas a country like India or Saudi Arabia, it might be a little bit more difficult. They do have more technological accessibility and freedom there. So social media isn't as much restricted. Countries like Saudi Arabia, there are a little bit of that as well. So I mean it's a little bit difficult, but overall, very bearish news for Bitcoin in the short term, right? So that's where we're kind of getting that hit. I'm actually really happy with that, because, like I said, it's great for us. We sold at majority position at all-time highs. We would like to get back lower. And relating to Riot, like I said, Riot, I think long term we're going to continue on a kind of downtrend. The only way we would get a bump is if Bitcoin price recovers rapidly. In the short term, because Riot and Mara are both extremely correlated, with Bitcoin pricing, as this is what traders kind of use to play Bitcoin in the equity markets. That's the only way that we'd see a move up. But at some point in time, Riot and Mara are going to kind of correlate with Bitcoin, and you'll see it kind of break up there. So yeah, DJ, if you want to share your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think, overall, a lot of countries have been kind of saying they've been banning crypto from day one. So it's kind of short-term hits, long-term, not really too much, I think. Crypto is one of those bull cycles where, if people believe in it, it really goes up. And then it doesn't really fade off these type of news, but it's just when the volatility is too high and like, if Bitcoin starts dropping like 10% a day, then that's something that kind of scares people. And then that is kind of something that would end it. So the fact that we haven't seen too much volatility on Bitcoin and at, compared to the old days where it would kind of go up and down like 10% very easily is a good thing. Stability is pretty good. So I don't think the ban overall does anything. But something to note is Bitcoin did make a lower low on a daily chart for the first time in over a year. So I could see a bit of a prolonged move down to the lower 40K range. But I do think it will kind of bounce up before that, back over probably 55 in the short term. Weekly charts are bullish, so until the weekly chart is downtrending, Bitcoin and rest of the market as well, to be honest, will kind of just continue going up as long as the weekly charts are intact. As for Riot, yeah, I alerted those June puts. I'm really just looking to kind of hold those June puts, and when we have kind of move ups on Riot, where maybe it moves in correlation with Bitcoin or something, I would look to just keep on adding bit by bit, adding more positions into it. I'll be easing in pretty slowly, so I have maybe about a quarter or a third of the position I would want to write at the moment, and I would be adding slow. So like when I'm adding, I would be adding maybe a tenth, and then adding another tenth, and then adding another tenth. So I would be looking to add on those June puts on moves up, and then once it moves down, I'll be holding through. And if it really drops quite significantly on the way down, then I would look to scale some out. But overall, I would be playing it bearish biased. Regardless of Bitcoin, I think it can correct very hard. Riot weekly chart is very weak. I wouldn't really be surprised if it was under $30 within a couple weeks. If it does hold up, we'll have to see. But for now, I'm just keeping my position on those puts. I think they're really pretty good to have. So not a huge position, but we'll look to add. And if it doesn't really tank in a month or so, I would probably roll over to July or August puts. But for now, there's enough time. 2 months is enough time. So going to hold through with that. XK also asks, Bill Foley stepping down from 2 SPACs will affect PaySafe. It might. It might affect the stock price in the short term, because there's a lot of people that are fans of Bill Foley, and they think that he would be able to bring a lot of good merger acquisitions on PaySafe. I'm not too sure what will really occur though. I really don't think it's really a big deal, but retail and people might blow it up out of a little bit of proportion. I don't really think it matters too much because the company itself is already kind of doing fine with what they're running right now. I think more importantly, SPAC sentiment overall and earnings will affect it. I really don't think him stepping down in his role is too big of a deal. So I don't really expect a move down on the stock price, to be honest. We just retook daily EMAs for the first time in a while, earnings in a couple of weeks. Company still very undervalued in my opinion. Should be a 3x in a couple of years. I have no doubt if this IPO, they would probably IPO at 40 or 50. So I mean, it's a long-term hold for me. I don't really think it's a big deal. It doesn't really change the company operations, and it doesn't really deduct any value from what they have right now. So that's my thoughts on that. Ramji, if you want to just add anything.
No, not too much. I haven't looked into the Bill Foley news too much, but I'll look into that. But overall, I don't think it would affect the long-term perspectives of PaySafe. So PaySafe, like I said, looking at actually valuations, I think PaySafe as a in the kind of sector of the financials with its comparables and with its current revenues and financials, I think it's very undervalued in my opinion. So I think it's a great long play. So yeah, there's that. So I don't doubt PaySafe, and I think it continues to be a good solid long hold. So valuations will end up lining up with financials and with its comparables in the sector. Like other good SPAC names, it's just really getting hit, being that it is in the SPAC sector. So that's what's causing that downwards effect on the ticker. So yeah, that's my opinions on that. But yeah, it looks like that's all the questions for this week. We've been running for about an hour, so we'll wrap it up here. Going into next week, just to reiterate, a lot of great earnings. I'll be watching some of the big ones like Tesla. I expect a lot of volatility in some of these tickers. More likely to the upside though, so it looks pretty good. If some of these companies put up great earnings, it can really impact the market in a positive way overall, and can make us continue upwards. If we do sell off on Monday, I think it would be still bullish to kind of liquidate hedges and go long as well. But because these large cap and tech names reporting would likely be more positive rather than negative catalysts for the overall market. So I think it looks good. If we do go green Monday, I would likely liquidate hedges and continue to go long and just maintain decent cash position as well. But all our plays look good, and the long-term perspective looks good as well. These earnings will be really interesting, so I'll be keeping a close eye on those and all these tickers, and ensuring that we take advantage of any plays that arise with the given opportunity. So yeah, other than that, I hope everyone has an amazing weekend. Next week as well, our media guy is actually busy on Saturday, so we will be moving the live session that we usually have on Saturday next week to Sunday instead. So just a quick heads up, I'll give a reminder out at the end of this week as well, just to remind everyone. But I hope everyone has an amazing weekend, and we'll be back on Monday to go get this money, guys. Have a great weekend and take care.
Yeah, take care.